Defer to the Cape. Senator Stevens.
Thank you, Madam President, and through you to my good friend from the Rocky Cape, and my good friend from Andover, and my friend from Quincy, and all of us here. I rise in strong opposition to Amendment 13. And I want us to be honest about really what's at stake here. Efforts to weaken the MBTA Communities Act are not about usurping local control or infrastructural logistics. It's about protecting an unsustainable status quo for our Commonwealth and for our residents. In a time when we should be deploying every tool at our disposal to expand access to housing, these carve-outs, this relief, will send us in the exact opposite direction. From the 1912 the Tenement House Act, an act that this legislature passed that blocked immigrant families from building triple-deckers, to today's zoning laws that require 2-acre lots and outlaw multifamily homes, Massachusetts, if we are being honest, has a long history of manipulating and controlling who gets to live where and who doesn't, all under the guise of local control. And let's be honest, over the past century, housing policy in Massachusetts at every level has made exclusivity its #1 priority. And since the COVID-19 pandemic, we have reached a breaking point. And this is a crisis of our own making. There are many topics that we have debated in this budget and will debate in the months ahead that have to do with crises concocted and formed in Washington, D.C., but not this one, right? This has to do with us, with the policies, with the zoning, with the approaches that we have taken that have quite literally caused a crisis of housing and housing insecurity and affordability in this state that we love. Home prices have gone up statewide 55% since 2019, right? 5 years, 55%. In order to afford the average home in Massachusetts, a family must earn at least $215,000 a year. That's more than double our median household income. And this, in many respects, is a supply problem. Boston, which to Boston's credit, does far more on housing than most of the 351 cities and towns in this Commonwealth, but yet Boston issues fewer permits per capita than cities like Austin, like Raleigh, like Denver. Our vacancy rates are some of the lowest in the nation, and families are getting squeezed out of the places that they call home. We are 220,000 homes short of where we need to be. 220,000, even with historic investments in the Affordable Homes Act. We estimate that this law that we're all very proud of is really just going to keep pace with subsidized housing that we've been doing and keep pace on inflation. And I don't think we are going to be able to subsidize our way out of this crisis, subsidize our way out of 220,000 housing units. No, if we're going to overcome this challenge, it's going to be by taking a long, hard look at the underlying policies and laws that have caused housing construction to drop by more than 50% to where it was in the 1960s through the 1980s. And that's when our population was significantly smaller than it is today. If we're truly being honest, MBTA Communities doesn't get us anywhere close to where we need to be. And if we can't stomach, which to be frank is a small, flexible requirement to expand access to housing near transportation hubs, we don't stand a chance at solving the broader problem. We might as well just give up an electoral college vote today in advance of the 2030 census. If we can't do this, the easiest part, then how the hell, if we can't do this, right, how the hell are we going to do what's actually needed to fix this problem, to make this a Commonwealth where people in my generation and younger are able to afford a home, where people who have a hope of being able to downsize? Restrictive zoning doesn't protect the character of our communities. In fact, by driving young people and working families out of our towns and cities, we're sacrificing the very fabric of our communities frankly in the name of preserving property values for those who by good fortune or birth were able to afford a home in an earlier era. For all that Massachusetts gets right, our world-class education system, cutting-edge healthcare, our innovation, unmatched quality of life, rights and liberties and dignity for so many, we're failing our residents when it comes to housing. And by doing so, we put everything else that we cherish at risk. We are hemorrhaging our brightest, most creative, most committed residents, denying them the chance to live the American dream in the place they choose to call home, all so we can cling to outdated zoning codes that mandate 1, or in some cases 2 or 3 or 4 acre lots for single-family homes, prohibiting multifamily housing, and requiring an arduous, wasteful, and infuriating permitting process. In my hometown of Truro, in scores of towns big and small across the Commonwealth, we are seeing firsthand how an often small minority, who often happen to be people who have the time, who have the ability, who have the wealth to show up at town meeting, to show up at planning boards, to show up before our town governance, to wield outsized influence on fighting every project, insisting that it's all about preserving character when the real objective is about preserving their wealth. Recent data tells us just how unrepresentative this sentiment is among our residents and among our voters. New polling out just this week or last, conducted by MassInc Polling Group, finds that most voters feel that the state and their communities are not addressing, that we are not doing enough to address the housing crunch. 93% of residents surveyed said the cost of housing is a problem in their community. 60% support multifamily zoning by right, and only 28% believe that preserving local control is more important than lowering housing costs. Let's be clear, the backlash that we're seeing, the lawsuits, the repeal bills, the so-called carve-outs, the relief, this is not the will of the people. It's the will of a vocal, entrenched group of residents who have the time to attend town meeting and to spew misinformation on social media. So we're late to the game. We are so sorely late to the game. I wish that we were taking on this issue 20 years ago, when some of us were in middle school and in high school, but we're late to the game on housing. We're 220,000 housing units behind. And so opposing MBTA communities, weakening MBTA communities, leaves behind our residents who struggle to pay their rent, who have no hope of even being able to afford to purchase a home, to afford that mortgage, to afford a state where the cost of living has skyrocketed because of our failure on housing. And we have long been aware of how unsustainable this status quo is. This is about whether the people who keep our communities, our Commonwealth running, can afford to live in them. It's about whether we still are a Commonwealth or just a collection of investments. It's about whether a home can be a cornerstone of a family's financial future, not just another fiscal instrument that allows those who are the most fortunate to profit and leaving everyone else behind. The people of Massachusetts want action. We all want action on this issue. I don't think I know a colleague in this chamber who doesn't talk to me as the chair of housing about how urgent it is that we take action on housing. And yes, we should be honest that this is hard because we are taking on an entrenched status quo. But I would just end and say it's time that we stop building barriers and start building homes. And as a legislative body, we must ensure that this Commonwealth can grow, evolve, and welcome the next generation. We build or we die. So let's make room for the nurse in Gloucester, the teacher in Brookline and Brockton, the State House staffer who lives in Medford or JP, the line cook in Truro. Let's stop managing decline, stop pretending exclusion is tradition, and let's lead Massachusetts into the next generation with policies that reflect who we are and where we want to go. I will vote no on the amendment. Thank you, Madam President.